Samurai vs. Knights and Spartans. Part 1. Introduction and Knights. Previously, we compared the Japanese samurai with the fierce Vikings of the north. We examined their weapons, their armor, and their warrior spirit. The results showed us that victory depended not only on steel, but also on culture and battlefield conditions. Now, in this second part, we bring new opponents to face the samurai. The heavily armored knights of medieval Europe, and the disciplined Spartan warriors of ancient Greece. How would the samurai fare against these two legendary forces? Let us begin with the knights. The European knight is perhaps the most iconic warrior of the Middle Ages. From the 11th to the 15th centuries, knights dominated European battlefields. They were not only soldiers, but nobles, bound by the code of chivalry, which emphasized loyalty, bravery, and protection of the weak. Knights were professional warriors, raised from boyhood as squires before earning the right to bear arms. Their identity was tied to honor, duty, and service to their lords, much like the samurai. Yet their battlefield appearance was very different. A samurai's armor, called yoroi or later tosai gasoku, was made from iron or leather plates laced together, designed to be flexible, protective, and relatively lightweight. It allowed mobility on horseback and in hand-to-hand combat. In contrast, the knight wore plate armor by the late Middle Ages, covering nearly the entire body in interlocking steel. This armor was incredibly resistant to slashes, thrusts, and arrows. A knight in full plate could weigh up to 100 pounds more than a samurai in armor, but he was surprisingly mobile, able to mount a horse, run, and fight effectively. So, when it comes to armor, the knight clearly had the heavier protection, but the samurai enjoyed greater agility. Now let us compare their weapons. The samurai's iconic weapon, the katana, was a curved blade designed for fast and precise cuts. But the samurai also used the yari spear and the naginata polearm, both with excellent reach. Meanwhile, knights wielded longswords, double-edged weapons capable of both cutting and thrusting. They also carried lances for cavalry charges, maces for crushing blows, and warhammers to pierce armor. Against plate armor, a katana might struggle to cut through. But a naginata or spear thrust to a weak point, such as the joints or visor, could still be deadly. On the other hand, the knight's longsword was versatile, and his lance, when used from horseback, delivered massive impact. This brings us to cavalry. Both samurai and knights fought on horseback, but in different ways. Samurai perfected mounted archery, using their long yumi bows to strike from a distance before closing in with swords or spears. Knights, in contrast, specialized in the heavy cavalry charge. Armed with lances, they rode in tight formation, aiming to break enemy lines with sheer momentum. If a samurai faced a knight in open ground, it would be speed and precision against mass and impact. The samurai could circle and shoot, while the knight would aim to close the distance with a devastating charge. So who holds the advantage? In a duel, the samurai's mobility and diverse weapons might allow him to exploit the gaps in the knight's armor. But in a cavalry clash, the knight's full plate protection and heavy lance could overwhelm. The balance lies in whether agility or armor prevails, and in how each warrior adapts to the other's strengths. Part 2. Samurai vs. Spartans. Now let us turn to the Spartans, the legendary warriors of ancient Greece. Spartans lived centuries before the samurai, yet their reputation as fearless fighters remains unmatched. From childhood, boys in Sparta were raised in the agoge, a brutal training system designed to produce soldiers who valued discipline, endurance, and unity above all else. By the time they reached adulthood, Spartan men were professional warriors, dedicated to the state. Unlike samurai or knights, who fought for lords or personal honor, Spartans fought for the collective survival of their city. Their armor was very different. Samurai wore lamellar armor crafted from iron and leather plates, designed for mobility and protection. Spartans, on the other hand, wore bronze helmets, breastplates, and greaves. Though less advanced than later plate armor, bronze offered solid defense against blades. The Spartan shield, or hoplon, was massive, covering much of the body, and it was central to their tactics. It was not only a personal defense, but the key to the phalanx, the most famous formation in ancient warfare. Their weapons reflected this approach. The Spartan spear, or dory, was long and deadly in formation, designed for thrusting. They also carried the short sword, the xiphos, as a backup for close combat. In contrast, the samurai had the katana, yari spear, and naginata, as well as the yumi bow. On paper, the samurai had a wider variety of weapons. But Spartans relied on the sheer effectiveness of a few, perfected over centuries of battle. Now let us imagine the battlefield. A unit of samurai Ashigaru spearmen lines up against a Spartan phalanx. Both groups lower their weapons. The Spartans march forward in perfect formation, shields locked, spears thrusting in unison. The samurai, more flexible in their tactics, might attempt to outflank or break the formation with arrows or cavalry. But breaking a phalanx head-on was nearly impossible without superior numbers. The samurai's strength lay in mobility and adaptability, while the Spartans' strength lay in unity and discipline. In one-on-one combat, the comparison shifts. A Spartan hoplite, with spear and shield, facing a samurai with katana or naginata, would be a fascinating duel. The samurai's precision strikes could exploit gaps in the armor, while the Spartan's shield could absorb blows and create openings for counterattacks. It would be speed and technique against brute endurance and the power of the shield. Victory would depend on whether the samurai could find a weakness before being overwhelmed by the Spartan's relentless pressure. Culturally, the two warriors could not be more different. The samurai valued honor and loyalty, often willing to die for their lord. The Spartan valued duty to the state above all else. Cowardice was unthinkable, and surrender was forbidden. A samurai's death in battle was seen as noble. A Spartan's death in battle was expected. This difference meant that both fought without fear, but for very different reasons. One fought for personal and familial honor. The other for collective survival and glory of the city-state. So, who has the edge? The samurai offered versatility and superior weapon craftsmanship. The Spartans offered unshakable formation and the psychological power of their phalanx. The outcome would once again depend on context. On open ground, a Spartan phalanx could resist almost anything. But in varied terrain, the samurai's adaptability might break their rigid formation. Neither can be declared superior in every case. Part 3, Honor, Philosophy, and the final question. Now that we have compared the samurai to both the European knight and the Spartan warrior, let us step back and look at the bigger picture. This is no longer just about weapons and armor. It is about the meaning of being a warrior, and the values that shape their lives. The samurai followed Bushido, the way of the warrior. This code emphasized loyalty, discipline, honor, and respect. To serve one's lord faithfully, and to face death without fear, was the highest calling. A samurai could not live without honor, and if dishonored, he might choose ritual death rather than shame. His sword was not only a weapon, but also the soul of his identity. The knight followed chivalry, a code that emphasized loyalty to God, to king, and to the weak. A knight was expected to fight bravely, to protect the innocent, and to serve justice. In reality, knights often strayed from this ideal, but the cultural image remained powerful. The knight's armor was a fortress of steel, and his sword was a symbol of both warfare and nobility. The Spartan warrior followed no personal code, but the collective discipline of his city-state. Every Spartan lived for Sparta. The state owned him, body and soul, from birth until death. For Spartans, courage was not a matter of choice, but of expectation. To break the phalanx, or to retreat from battle, was considered disgraceful not only for the man, but for his entire city. In this way, the Spartan was less an individual, and more a piece of the whole. When we compare these three, we see three visions of the warrior's role in society. The samurai, an artist of war, balancing skill and honor. The knight, a noble defender, wrapped in faith and steel. The Spartan, a soldier of the state, whose life belonged entirely to his people. Each represents the ideals of his culture, and each remains legendary because of it. So, who was the greatest warrior? Was it the samurai, with his unmatched technique and spirit of honor? Was it the knight, with his fortress of armor and devastating cavalry charge? Or was it the Spartan, with his unbreakable phalanx and dedication to the state? The truth is, there is no single answer. Each was supreme in his own world. Each would have victories, and defeats, depending on the battlefield and the era. And perhaps that is why we still speak of them today. Because true warriors are remembered not only for what they won, but for what they represented. So, who do you think was the strongest? Tell us your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this battle of legends, stay tuned. Because next time, we will explore new matchups. What happens when samurai face the stealth and shadows of the ninja? Or when they stand against the unstoppable might of the Mongol hordes? The story of the samurai, and their place among the world's greatest warriors, is far from over.